There's the official word. And I will let you go ahead and start the introductions. And I'm going to pull up that file. I'm going to put a file in the chat box. And we'll talk about it in just a minute. So no peeking yet.
Okay, awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Brittany, we just saw you pop in. Welcome, Carrie. A few of us were on here a little early, and so we've said hello, but maybe we'll go around really quickly and just say where everyone's calling in from and what your local association is. As Gretchen mentioned, we are noticing that in some local associations are really flourishing in the current environment, and some local associations are really struggling. Some of the struggles that we're seeing are really, kind of common struggles that we all have struggled with year after year in our local associations. And some of them have really had a major impact since the start of the pandemic. And also, as Gretchen mentioned, it seems to be dependent in some ways on where you are geographically, what the impact is on your local association. In some cases, the more rural area local associations are really flourishing, whereas those in city centers are really struggling. There's a lot of speculation as to why that is, and we have our theories, but we're interested in hearing how things are going for you. And the purpose of this conversation is not to just commiserate about how terrible things are. It's really to talk about what are the challenges you've faced and what are things that have worked for you to overcome them, because a lot of local associations have run into some significantly challenging times and gotten on the backside of that, pulled it out of the fire, had some successes. But we want to be really realistic that this is a challenging time right now for many people in an environment that was always challenging. Succession planning and board development was always challenging in the best of times. You would throw in the challenges of the last couple of years, and it's people are working really, really hard. And I personally appreciate how hard you are as a representative of your local association. How hard you are working right now to keep things going. It always takes a few people who are working really, really, really hard to keep those oars in the water and keep making things going forward until you can pass the baton onto the next boat who takes the oars down the river again. So I salute the efforts that you are making right now. So my name is Jen. I'm in Portland, Oregon. For 5 years, I was in the board of directors for the Northwest Oregon Volunteer Administrators Association. I served 3 years as president. I timed out, hooray for term limits. And now I work with Alive supporting this committee that is really interested in supporting local associations. I feel like they are just essential and vital to our well-being in our jobs, but also in really furthering the work of volunteer administration throughout the country. I have huge respect and am big fans of the local associations that are represented here today. So thank you for being here. And I guess I'll call the next person will call the next person. So Jerry, do you want to say hi?
Yes, hello. I'm Jerry Pinozzo from New York Association for Volunteer Administration. I'm currently the president. I was actually involved before we were incorporated nearly 25 years ago. I pick Arlette, my board chair.
Uh-oh, Arlette, you're muted.
Sorry. So I'm Arlette Cunningham from New York, and I'm currently Jerry's partner in crime and board chair of New York Association for Volunteer Administrators. Oh, I picked Marilyn.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Mary Lynn Perry, and I'm the vice chair currently of Dovia Sacramento and incoming president. And I pick, let's see, who's next? Jennifer Thompson.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Thompson. I am associated with Tulsa Alive and serving the northeast portion of Oklahoma, but I currently just moved to Colorado, so I'm serving long distance. I don't know who else is on. I can't see, so I don't know who to pick. Jana?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jana Daisy. I'm with Volunteer Iowa, and we're located in Des Moines. And I am representing today the Volunteer Managers of Central Iowa, or VMCI. Currently, the board chair or the marketing chair for the board, and then depending on how voting goes this month, maybe stepping into the vice president role for next year. So this is my first time on this call, but I'm excited to join you more for future calls. And I will call on, is it Colleen?
Thanks, Jana. I'm Colleen from Boise, Idaho. I am the communications director for Southwest Idaho. I've suddenly forgotten the acronym. You're welcome, Shirley. My counterpart is on here. But anyway, Southwest Idaho Directors of Volunteer Managers and Services. And I am excited for this call because we are definitely struggling. I apologize if you've already gone. Carrie Hart.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Hart with the Delaware Association of Volunteer Administrators in Dover, Delaware. And I think our whole board is on this call because we really, really need your insight and expertise. So thank you to Alive and Gretchen for hosting this today. And I will call on Lisa.
I'm Lisa Romish, and I serve on the DAVA board with Carrie and Angela and Rich. And I second everything Carrie said, that we are in need of great help. We are a small but mighty state, but we are struggling. And I'll pass it over to Rich.
Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Huber here with as part of the DAVA board here in Delaware, and I also work for the Division for Visually Impaired. I'm up here in Newcastle County in Delaware. But I agree with everything they've said. We need help getting, kind of more people interested, kind of helping us with the board taking over, doing things of that nature. So we are very, very grateful for you today, and hopefully we can gain some tools to help us. So thank you. And I will call on Angela.
All right, the fourth from Delaware, ditto, ditto, ditto is all I'm going to say. How's that? So Angela with DAVA.
How about Brittany?
Oh, thanks, sorry.
No worries. Hello, everyone, joining you from very, very hot and sunny Dallas. I was really excited to see this one come up because I am the president this year. I'm starting my first of my 2-year term with the Dallas Association of Directors of Volunteers, also known as DADV. And we were fortunate to have 3 new board members join, but this is probably the first time in probably 4 years that we've had completely new blood on the board instead of people just shuffling positions. So I went to the last local association meeting and got a lot of good tips and tricks, which I think helped us get those 3 people. But I am really a person who plans for the future. So I'm looking forward to the lessons that we'll learn today. Thank you so much.
And is that really Michelle, or is that maybe Tim?
If you're talking about me, it's Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Weisner. I'm the president of the Georgia Association for Volunteer Administration. So representing another hot area down in the Southeast. So I feel you, Brittany. It's sweltering down here. But like a lot of the comments that have been shared already, we have a handful of board members and can always use more and have problems with recruitment. We had a couple of new members join a couple of years ago and have seen pretty steady participation in those couple of years, but we need more people because there's just not enough of a board presence to do all the things that we want to do. So very grateful for the board members that we have, but definitely looking to learn about how to improve the presence and lessen the burden of the folks who raised their hands and said yes to being on the board, period. So yeah, glad to be here. Thanks, guys.
And Shirley, would you like to say hi?
Well, yes, I'll say hi. I am with Colleen representing the Southwest Idaho Directors of Volunteer Services in Idaho. We don't have a board. We have what we call a leadership team, and everybody has a job, except me. I'm the guru because I've been there since it began. I was with Alive when on the very first board with Gretchen as a founding member, and have been involved with volunteer services. I'm retired. I was director of volunteer services at the local hospital for almost 20 years, and have continued in volunteerism along the way. And I don't know whether we're struggling. Colleen says we're struggling. We actually have grown in some ways and lost others because of the pandemic, because we've now spread out over all of Idaho rather than just our little corner of the world. So that's where we are. And I went to the last meeting also, and I think that this is a very good idea, you guys.
Awesome, thank you. It is our honor to have a guru amongst us. So thank you so much for bringing all of that institutional knowledge and wisdom with you. Thank you so much. And I am gonna guess a lot of folks know Gretchen, but you know, as far as I can tell, everything would fall apart if Gretchen wasn't here. So hello, Gretchen. Do you want to do an introduction?
Sure. When Shirley was talking about how, you know, she was here at the beginning at the very first board of Alive, I was like, yeah, that was me. Yes, I'm the association manager for Alive, and this community of practice for local associations is really near and dear to my heart, because I was also president of NOVA in Portland, Oregon, back in the day. And certainly so much that I learned on the board and leadership really kind of brought me literally to where I am today. So it's been a great experience, and there's just nothing that beats that local peer-to-peer contact in this role. So we have a couple things, like I said, this is a very informal conversation today, and we wanted to share something though, and I put it in the chat a couple of times because I've learned on Zoom, if you put an attachment in the chat and then somebody else comes in later, they don't see it. So I put it in there a bunch of times. If I need to do it again, I'm happy to do that. Oh, here comes Tim. That'll be great. So if you want to look at that attachment, this was something I found in my files, and then I just embellished it. And it was, you know, why should you join a board? So sometimes your supervisor, executive director may need convincing. So this is just a list of things. And so if this is something you wanted to try as something that, you know, will add some, you know, professionalism to what you'll be doing on this board, there's some great reasons. So I just want to give you guys a quick moment to just overview it. And hi, Tim, and we're going to let you introduce yourself in just a moment. But if you have more suggestions, put them in the chat, and then I will add them to this letter. Then I'll send that out to everybody, and then I'll put it in our handbook, because, you know, it couldn't hurt, right? I know there was a couple of times in my role, I didn't really ask permission. I just started doing it because I had the flexibility. And, you know, I think being able to, for many of us working from home, I think that has been a really positive thing in some way, because you can do that. But I also know that, you know, some bosses are just so micromanagers that they want to account for every single moment of your time. So here's a good way to maybe talk about some of the benefits, as well as convincing other people that they should just, you know, jump in and take the time to do that. So if you've got any suggestions, just put them in the chat. I'll add them back into this, and then, you know, send it back out to everybody when I post the recording and the slide deck on the members only side of the page. So Tim, thanks for joining us. I'm going to give it back to Jen from here.
Tim, do you want to say a quick hello, where you're from? I mean, I know, but our other friends don't.
Sure. And sorry about coming in late. Not sure what happened there. But I am Tim Suda. I am from the wonderful state of Georgia in the southeastern United States. I'm the vice president of the Georgia Association for Volunteer Administration, and my job that pays my bills is working with the American Red Cross. So I'm really excited to be here.
Great, thank you. Well, let's just jump in. So again, what are the challenges you're facing? What are some successes you've had? What are some tools and tricks that would be good to share with the group? We can workshop specific questions. The purpose of this is to just share our knowledge and talk about what's going on across the country. And if nothing else, hopefully it normalizes some of the experiences that we're having. You know, Gretchen mentioned she was the NOVA president years ago. Gretchen was one that pulled our association out of the fire and kept things going so that when I got there, things were running really well. So we've all run into these bumps in the road, and longevity is very much possible. But it does take commitment from folks like you, and I appreciate how challenging that can be. So let's start off with Jana, calling in from Iowa. How are things in Iowa? Share with us.
Yeah, thank you. You know, as far as general membership, we're doing okay. We have probably 70 to 75 members, but engagement of the members, as I'm sure is pretty typical, is a little bit lower. And like most of you probably, it's been a pretty weird year with hybrid, you know, some virtual meetings, some in-person meetings, and just trying to kind of figure out what that looks like going forward as well. We do seem to have better attendance actually when we have those virtual meetings. I think just it's easier for people to get, you know, just get on their computer than to have to drive somewhere and build in that extra time. But we're definitely missing those connections, and that networking piece is a little more challenging. So just trying to navigate some of that. As far as our board, we have a good number of board members who have been on the board for several years. And I think part of that is because no one else is volunteering to do it. We have been able to successfully recruit a couple of committee members and one new board member for this upcoming program year. And really our strategy has been kind of twofold. One is looking at our attendance from the last 6 months, the last year. We do try to take attendance at all of our meetings, and then seeing who's been most engaged, who's been most participatory, and then reaching out and directly asking them if they would be interested in having a place on the board or joining a committee. Sometimes a committee is a nice way to kind of test the waters a little bit. So that's been somewhat successful for us. And then also just kind of people that we as board members know a little bit more personally and can kind of use that personal connection to make that ask. But we also want to be careful that we're not then limiting who's on our board by only people that are already in our networks, because I think we have a lot of great, great knowledge and expertise in our members that maybe we don't know as well. And so trying to kind of figure out other ways to get a hold of some of those other members and make those personal connections. So that's where we're at now. Our vice president that was on our board last year has unfortunately left our board. So thankfully our president was willing to serve a second year as the president. So she'll be continuing in that role. And then I'm planning to step into the VP role for this upcoming year. So that's been our strategy so far. I can't remember if there was anything else that you wanted me to touch on.
No, that's all great. You're mentioning a lot of the personal connections that you're making, the direct asks, and volunteer management 101 is the best way to actually recruit a volunteer is to ask them personally, right? Not to like throw it out on Volunteer Match or whatever. How has that been going for you? Has that been successful in terms of that being a central focus of your strategy? Is that personal engagement?
It has. I mean, a couple folks that still declined, but I think just, based on their time constraints and situations, but we have been pretty successful making those more personal asks versus, just kind of sending it out in the newsletter and hoping people apply.
And are you at the point where the folks who are keeping things together in leadership are reaching a burnout point and are ready to pass the baton?
Not yet. Maybe a couple.
Sure.
Yeah. But I think for the most part, most of the board is still, at least for now, in it for another year or two at least.
Great. It actually sounds like you're in a really good place. Is that an accurate reflection?
If we're doing okay. I mean, I think it would be nice if we had more people
Of course.
and didn't have to go, personally requesting people to join. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think we're comfortable with where we are.
Yeah, but I think the things you're highlighting about the relationship building that's necessary, those personal asks, and the challenge of how to do that in a virtual environment, that speaks to me. So that's helpful. Awesome. Thank you, Jana, for sharing with us what's going on with Iowa. And we can, I guess one way we can do this is we can start asking questions now, or maybe just hear from everybody and then start popcorning. Does anybody, let's say this, if you like the first idea of going on to the next speaker and then popcorning at the end, maybe raise your hand so I can see. Okay, it looks like a majority. Okay, great. So we'll move along. Thank you, Jana. And next, I think we're staying in. Oh no, we're popping over to the West Coast or the East Coast for Delaware. So, and Delaware, you have a lot of folks who have joined us today. So, Angela, are you going to kind of represent?
I think so. I'll go and they can jump in. So that's kind of how our team works. Carrie and I have probably been on the leadership the longest. Rich is next, and Lisa is newer. We used to have president, vice president, a secretary, assistant secretary. We had a really big board. Over time that just went dwindling down, and then eventually we just became a board group, and that's kind of what happened. And so that's kind of what you see is the main leadership that's been keeping it together during COVID. So for us, we've had some succession planning where we've had some younger folks come in, younger into the field, and say, yes, I want to be part of the board. And they jump in and they're with us for 6 months, maybe a year, probably less than that. And then they're off to another job, which may not, or probably doesn't even relate to volunteerism anymore. So we've tried, we've had newbies in, and then they're back out before we can get them trained and into what we do. So that's our succession planning. Hasn't worked really great. New people have been flowing in and out. The membership numbers have dropped as well because of COVID, I do believe. And so a challenge for us is to up our membership and to get organizations in Delaware to know that we even exist, for those volunteer leaders to know that we're even there. We have a solution. I'll come to that in a minute. Well, I don't know if a solution, but we're working on it. And so I think that's our biggest challenges right now, both membership and board. Kind of a big challenge, but one of our solutions is locally, we have somebody who was encouraging us and inviting us to apply for a VISTA person, VISTA, if you're familiar with that. And so that is in the works. Hopefully we will get a VISTA, and part of their role will be to help DAVA make a list of all the not-for-profits, find the contacts for those not-for-profits, so that then we can make those connections and hopefully invite them to join DAVA, and then hopefully then get some leadership roles. I'm going to stop. So Lisa, Carrie, Rich, jump in.
The only other thing I would say is probably 6 or so years ago, the State Office of Volunteerism decided not to partner with us anymore on a conference, on DAVA as a whole. They don't want their staff being a part of DAVA. They see us more as a threat than as a partner. I know, Jen, that's how we feel too. That's the face. Yeah, so that I think was when things really took a turn for us, because they were such a support and such a great partner that having that leave us it just took everything. So yeah.
I think another thing we've seen a lot of, at least in this area, is a lot of volunteer administrators let go during the pandemic. So that's been part of the problem, people switching like some of our board members we thought would take over, switching industries or that kind of stuff has been hard. And I think overall, like everyone is just on burnout. And like I work in a hospital, Carrie works in a hospital, Angela works for the blood bank. And it's been kooky for the past 2.5 years. So I think adding something else to somebody's plate right now is just, it's overwhelming to them. Sometimes it's overwhelming to us who are doing it.
And I would just say kind of on the end of all that is I do a lot of the communications and marketing on that side. And it's, I guess, like our thing too is trying to find different ways to reach out to people to network, because I do send a mass email to some people who are even ex-members. We have a Facebook group, we have a LinkedIn. We try to get out there as much as we can on a virtual side, but even with all that plugging we're doing, we're still having trouble kind of getting bites sometimes. And I think it is kind of on the heels of what everybody else says. People are just stretched really thin and there's just a lot going on, but it's trying to get that participation back up too, which has been hard.
Yeah, I mean, you all are pointing to things that we've heard echoed from local associations kind of across the country, really common problems. Am I right that, do you serve a more urban environment or is it a more rural environment where you are? I imagine are a lot of your members from the city?
It's really interesting. Delaware has 3 counties total in the whole state, and the northern county is where Wilmington is, and so that has the largest population. The other 2 have been typically more rural. We have a lot of New York-ish retirees coming into the middle of our state, but it's still pretty rural. And so I would say we're kind of 2/3 rural, 1/3 not, or
City,
suburbia.
Yeah. Because especially in the cities, the pandemic shut things down in a way that in a lot of parts of the country it really didn't. And so we're seeing a lot of the local associations kind of flourish in places where the impact on the cities was just really different than, in rural Indiana, for example. They continued their life, their mission, their work in a very in the way that they always had in a lot of places. And where I live, things are still shut down. I'm still not allowed to go into my office. It's still really, it's like living in 2 different worlds. And so the impacts can vary greatly. It sounds like you all, it's interesting because as much as you're highlighting the struggles, I'm looking right at the successes here on the screen. There's 4 of you who are involved in this conversation that invested in keeping things moving forward and that involved in maintaining things. So kudos to you. You all are really, really doing the work. And, when you mention burnout, this is just my opinion, but it's okay that if sometimes you might have to step back from some of the programming that you would typically do and scale things back in order to make it more sustainable. That's my feeling about it. But I imagine you're experiencing some significant burnout. It's not just your members.
Yeah, I would say you're right on that. And we've also tried to join in, sorry, Carrie, we've also joined with the NVAVA, Northern Virginia, a couple times last year and the year before. And so we've tried to reach out to other groups as well to coordinate some programs.
This is Jennifer. You said you don't have an association or a connection with whom again?
The State Office of Volunteerism.
Okay, we've had the same thing in Oklahoma, so.
It's so frustrating.
That's a devastating loss, I can imagine. And I wonder if there are possibilities. One of the things that multiple people have mentioned in our conversations is other kinds of partnerships. So maybe we can talk about what other kinds of partnerships might look like, as we move forward this morning, or I guess this afternoon where you are. Anything else?
We also have in Delaware Association, I'm going to get this wrong, Delaware Association or Alliance of Not-for-Profits, basically, is what it is. And we've tried to work with them a little bit, and that's also been standoffish. So unfortunately, nobody else wants to play with us.
Apparently. Well, I wonder if you know, a lot of things are virtual, maybe there are things in the greater New England area that might be possible outside of just Delaware. You know, I mean, we partner with folks who are in across the state line in Washington. It's not just Oregon, you know, because virtual, we can literally, you know, are like the sky's the limit in that way, in terms of folding folks in from a you know, I don't know, just an idea, but we can talk more about that. Should we invite the next? I'm trying to remember who is next on our roster, Gretchen. If you switch slides, I'll. Oh, Tim, hey, you want to tell us about Georgia? So this is interesting because you all had some struggles prior to the pandemic, or kind of right at the beginning of the pandemic, and things have really evolved for you. So I'm curious to hear how that.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And our president for the Georgia Association for Volunteer Administration is also here. So Michelle's here, and she's going to keep me honest today. But we did, and that was before I joined our board and before I got really involved in it in GAVA. But we've really taken the challenging situation that has been COVID, that has been really just everything, and we've made the best out of it. And that's really the best we can do. We've got a small board, but all of our board members are active. You know, it's a really great team where everyone is highly collaborative. We're working together. We have email chains going on weekly, and we really, I don't know that we did it officially, or I don't even know that we did it consciously, but what we did is we really just tightened everything down and went back to the basics. And, you know, it was, okay, let's build on it. Let's try different things. Yeah, okay, we've done this the same way for our 30 some odd years of being an organization, and we now are up to our 35th year. But maybe there are things that we can adjust. And we tried things, and things we thought would work didn't work. And then things that I think we didn't anticipate would have the return also had the return as well. You know, a little while ago, someone said the membership's not necessarily up, but engagement numbers are up. And I think that's true for us. We're seeing higher engagement with our email communications, higher engagement with all of our social media posts, consistent and higher attendance of all of our events and presentations and webinars. And we're hosting more of them than ever before. We're in a unique situation, and I think many of you guys may be as well, where we're a statewide organization, and there are 4 semi-active local organizations within the state. There's two to three COVAs. There's a DVS there, and then there's also a corporate volunteer group out of Atlanta, and each one of these groups has had their challenges, and some of them have fully bought into COVA, literally becoming an organization member to expand their membership benefits to their own organization. And others just partner with us closely, and we do joint presentations. And where our more localized organizations in Georgia have struggled, we've really been able to support those individuals. And like one of our local organizations unfortunately had to cancel both their July and August presentations, just because so much of their organization was traveling or wasn't available or wasn't responsive. But those who are engaged and want to be engaged, we still have such great opportunities for them with GAVA. And it's just been amazing. The other thing that we did as recently as last year, and maybe I'm giving too much information and Michelle will yell at me later, when we looked at our most recent annual budget, when we actually approved it for the year, we accepted that we were going to take a loss, and we knew that, and we admitted it, and we said we're willing to do that for this year or for this period of time, because it's a rebuilding for us. It's an opportunity for us to really focus on our workforce. It's an opportunity for us to really, or not our workforce, but our membership, opportunity for us to really focus on our programming. And it's been really successful. Now, the one thing I would say that surprised me the most is I thought we heard lots of people saying that our membership fee may have been a barrier during COVID, with people losing their jobs, new people in the career, people, gas prices going up, and things like that. So we actually offered for a number of months a significantly discounted rate. And yet nearly every person that joined during that time paid the full rate. And we didn't see an increase in membership like we were expecting. In fact, I don't know that by dropping the price, we saw any increase. I think we were on our regular trajectory. So on some aspects, we're sad that that didn't succeed as well as we thought it would. But on others, I'm happy that it shows that we have value to our members. And I know personally, and I think most of our board members would agree with me, having value for the members that we have is more important than existing for many, many more members, but not having value. So we're very thankful for everything we weathered. I know Michelle worked with a lot of the team, a lot of this committee, to really get some good feedback for GAVA on how we can, grow and at the time survive. And are we where we want to be? No, I don't think anybody is right now, if we're being fair. But am I happy with where we are? I'm very happy with where we are. There's so much greatness going on, and we're just going to continue building off of that. Michelle, is there anything I missed? She may not come off mute. We'll see.
I'm here, Tim. You did a great job encapsulating the history and how we've got to where we are today. And I have to say, in this forum, well, in any forum that we're both a part of, that Tim is a fantastic member of our board, and I would say he's made a huge difference in just bringing energy, and he's like a total idea machine. So a lot of the new things that we've tried, like the discounts that he mentioned and things like that, have been his idea, and he's a driving force of that. And I think it's a great example of how just one new member or one energized person on a small board can make a total difference and can really help in energizing the other 4 people who are there, the other 5 people who are there. So definitely want to thank Tim for his presence and energy on our board. The only thing that I would add, and I think Tim touched on this a little bit, is that because we're a statewide organization, I think part of we saw a benefit, honestly, in the pandemic, where people were forced to work virtually, or they were, more comfortable in a virtual environment. And that meant that, hey, maybe they will jump on a webinar and they're not as tied to those in-person meetings as we were previously. So I think for us, again, because we're statewide, we're able to extend access and, be more inclusive, if you will, of people participating in our events and meetings, which I think is beneficial for lots of reasons. But I'm hoping that even as we return to more in-person events locally, that that continues, so we can, keep engaging the members that we have, as Tim said, and hopefully increase membership as well over time.
Awesome. I am so excited about what's going on in Georgia. And, Michelle, you made the point about it takes one really active, innovative person like Tim. That's been my experience as well. I was on boards sometimes when we had 16 members and there was a handful of people doing the work. And then I've been on boards where there was a handful of people. There was still the same handful of people doing the work. So, just because you don't have a board of like 35 people, even if you did, it's still probably the same 5 people who are actually moving the work forward. So you just need a handful of people who are, like the Delaware folks, like Tim, that are actually making it happen. And another thing that jumps out at me from what Tim just shared is, in Iowa, they're focusing on personal asks and relationship building, which is highly effective in volunteer management and in board development. In Delaware, they're being realistic about the state of things in terms of burnout and just really being realistic about where people are. Tim, also, you mentioned getting back to basics and scaling things back a little bit. Was that like an intentional strategy? Was that just what you had to do because that's the number of people you had? Like, how did you approach that?
If we're being fair, it was born out of necessity. However, like I said, we've got a number of local organizations. When we realized it was happening, we owned it. And what we saw was a number of our local organizations either didn't realize it was happening or didn't own it, or both, and are now in significantly more precarious places than they were before. I don't know that anyone ever said, "Hey, we need to like shrink it back or scale it back temporarily." It was more of, that's where everybody on our boards, that's where the hearts were based on everyone's actions, was let's focus on what's important. And what's important is providing quality programming, providing that connectivity, networking, talking to people, personal contacts, getting to know people. Michelle and I make it a point to personally welcome every new member, to spotlight them, to get them connected to other people. And we just keep doing all these little things. We spent considerable amount of time on making our website very, very user-friendly and simple. We spend time making our newsletter very good looking and have relevant information, because if we're going to have a website, if we're going to have a newsletter, if we're going to do social media, if we're going to do programming, it needs to be quality. And that quality, again, going back to those basics, let's get the basic things right. If we can get the basic things right and there's quality, and then we accept the reality, which is, okay, this is a financial loss for us. We're in a good enough place as an organization that we had, funds to be able to accept a year of loss. Not a significant loss, but definitely not a break-even year. And we're in a very lucky situation that we could do that. But being able to own that and move forward, it's what's keeping us on the trajectory that we're on now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Mary Lynn, before we go over to Jerry, Mary Lynn, you were going to maybe pepper in a couple of like brass tacks fundamentals that have been successful in Sacramento. Do you have anything you wanted to share off the top of your head before we transition over to Jerry?
Yeah, a couple things just as I've been listening, because we've tried some of the same sorts of things, and what we're finding is that people are more willing to come in, as you were suggesting, some of the folks about being a committee member, or we are also using member at large, where sometimes people don't want to come into a board chair position, like they don't want to chair your membership or your awards program or whatever, but they're interested in being on the board, partly for their own professional development, and they would prefer to be at that level as opposed to being a committee member. But the member at large position seems to be helping people find where they fit a little bit, and giving them, the opportunity to kind of explore different options. So I think that has actually been a helpful position to have on our board. And we've found that people will come into one level as a member at large, and then the next year they take on the chair of something. We've also been playing around with co-chairs. Our bylaws don't actually say they were supposed to be able to do that, but we just are doing it anyway. And that seems to help. It's like people sometimes are afraid to take the big leap and take something on completely. I think partly because things have been so changeable. There's just, you get thrown this way or that, your agency changes something all of a sudden because of other things that are happening. So that seems like the co-chair part seems to be helping too. So we're experimenting.
Yeah, I love the co-chair. We're doing co-chair at Nova as well. Was that everything on your list?
That's enough for now.
Okay, I'll sprinkle in one thing that has been really helpful at Nova is they have a dedicated person whose entire job all year is just board development. So trying to recruit the next batch of people starting on the first day that they get into office, that's been really helpful. We also assign board buddies. So somebody on the board who's been around can help usher in somebody who's new and help get them on, up and running more quickly. We also do membership recruitment on a rolling basis, like on a monthly basis. We have a list and do outreach every month, as opposed to doing it all at the end of the year. It helps make it smaller chunks that you can just do in a more sustainable way throughout the year to just bump up basic membership numbers. And the last thing I will mention is that they started doing during COVID was that when we had a board recruitment event, it used to be one thing, one time, and everybody come and have a cocktail and learn about the board. Now they hosted like 6 of them last year, different days, different times. One was on a weekend, but trying to make it super accessible to where if you were interested in being in the board and you wanted to come and hear the half-an-hour spiel about it, they were making that really easy to do, which I thought was genius. I was really happy to see that. So we're going to throw over to Jerry. And Jerry, you're going to talk a little bit about more strategic planning and succession planning as that relates. I think you're on mute, Jerry.
Gretchen, you'll allow me to do the screen share? Okay. Okay. So I start out with a little slide, one slide just to kind of keep me on track. And I'm now going to set my timer because I talk too long. Okay, there we go. So thank you for this opportunity to share what NIAV has been up to. I'm hearing lots of things about things that we have done, have tried to do, things that have succeeded, things that we have kind of maybe not succeeded at. I'm going to start with a quote from the president position description, which even though I'd seen it for many years, when I became president, I said, oh, it's time to review that once more time. And at the beginning of each term, the president shall set priorities for board work and special projects for the upcoming year, taking into account the strategic plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens when you haven't seen a strategic plan in a couple of years? Actually, in the 4 years that I'd been on the board and been on nominating committee, I had not seen a strategic plan. But I will say over the 4 years, our nominating process really improved, and I'm hearing some great things, that some things we did, some things we might consider. So my first step was I call it my brainstorming. I came up with like a plan, a roadmap. So it was a document where I just jotted down ideas, some new ideas. I'm a systems guy, so I'm going, okay, what systems do we need in place? And like a timeline, so I'm very project management oriented because of my first career, where I managed a student costume shop and blah, 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 but that's a whole nother chapter. See, I talked too long. So step 2 was, once I cleaned up that document, I shared it one-on-one with the incoming board chair, because we have like this kind of equal leadership role. And I shared it with each incoming board chair, because I had some ideas for how the officers could be supportive of the president, because sometimes those leadership roles are a barrier. They're barriers. It's like, I'm not going to take on the presidentship, being the president, because there's just too much. It's too much. I also wanted to look at some new approaches, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes. So then I transitioned the plan roadmap to a strategic plan proposal in the form of a chart, which I'm going to go over quickly with you. So prior to the first board meeting, people saw the chart. I also shared like a cleaned up version of the document because the chart was less detailed. I'm also going to talk about how we were open to change when necessary. And at the end, the local association committee suggested that I do a handout for you all. It's a blank sample chart, so I'll be sharing that with you. Okay, so I do this. Oops, shoot. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to move this a bit. Can everybody see this okay? Okay, so I have to switch my pages. Okay. Setting myself up here. So basically, we did a 2-year strategic plan. You all know why. Who can plan 5 years out these days, right? We wanted to establish systems to support NIAVA regarding the administration, what the board is responsible for. The benefits we provide for members, because bottom line, that's what we're here for, to serve our members. And then to promote NIAVA, the big secret here in New York City, that they don't know who we are and what we do, So how were we going to do that? We were going to agree on quarterly goals that needed to be strategic. You have to have a plan. And they also need to be manageable so they're not intimidating. And then we came up with 5 focus areas that I'm going to discuss. I'm going to skip this next section in terms of some of our bigger quarterly goals. So I'm going to go to what and who, how we broke the quarters down. So in terms of the administration, that involves the board of directors, that includes the officers and the members at large. In our nominating committee, we came up with being much more specific in terms of what expectations were. And we did some of these strategies that have been discussed. And for the first year, we did the, a webinar, like a Zoom meeting to find out what it means. Because some people, oh, I want to be on the board, I want to be on the board. It does involve work, so, but being honest, like we do with all volunteer assignments, what is expectation? So we initially set up a goal for all board members to assist with membership recruitment. We had to give that up because our board was so small, they were so busy, and we're going, let's be realistic. We don't want to create another barrier to leadership. One of my key phrases this year. So we wanted to have an annual calendar, so it's not hit or miss, but let the professional development committee know incrementally what's the setup. Our goal is get the information out 6 weeks out. So some people have calendars booked 2 weeks in advance. Couldn't always do that in the past. So we wanted to plan for 2023, NIAVA's 25th anniversary. This is after they became independent of AVA and blah, blah, blah. We've not even looked at that. I keep mentioning it, but once again, we're not dealing with that. One of my big disappointments was this piece here, which often has been stated today. I wanted to rebuild the committee structure, which we used to have. It's a way to engage members, and people have talked about membership engagement, which I'm very nervous about this year. It's our leadership development. I kept saying, this is where our future board members are nurtured. They get their toes in the water, they see what it is, you spot leadership. And somebody mentioned you kind of monitor who's participating and, even if they are virtual events and that kind of stuff. And ultimately that played into our succession planning, which we've tried to do the last couple of years. Okay, so we focused on professional development and networking events for our members. So we try to do 4 workshops per year. Now we do charge for our workshop because it's a revenue generating source. So they get 3 they pay for, but then the annual members meeting one is free. We've really pushed the, then we've got our Principles and Practices of Volunteer Program management course that used to be offered twice a year. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we've really pushed the Alive Academies, which are a free benefit. And we actually, even though we charge for the hybrid conference, it has been well attended the last couple of years. So then we've got our professional networking events that are basically freebies, the happy hours, which we see as more of a networking event. Anybody's invited. The Brown Bag Breakfast has started out as a members event, but now it's like anybody who wants to, and people can take on a topic. So each quarter, in terms of this year's calendar, we offer 1 workshop, 1 Brown Bag Breakfast, and 1 happy hour. Now we had like a happy hour this year where one of our general members hosted the bingo, which was fun. So then I want to talk a little bit about a model that we established in 2020, 2021 to update and transition our Principles and Practice of Volunteer Program Management to a virtual experience. It ended up being a longer ad hoc committee than planned, 9 months, but hey, 9 months, what does that tell you? But we are duplicating that model. I just want to check something. Oops, sorry. Oops, sorry. Okay. So we started out with our support services business entities. And what is that? Where does the money go? Where's the bang for our buck? buck, because we're struggling. Full disclosure, all confidential, right, despite being recorded. We're struggling financially because we've got some big expenses and we're trying to explore other options. Then we had the social media communication marketing ad hoc committee. We expanded it from just social media because to hone in on things. And each of these have an established purpose and duties before they launch. And the goal is for them to be short term. The first one is still going on. We closed the second one. Okay, so the focus of DEI and A was going to happen the second quarter. We moved it to the third quarter, unfortunately. We want to have a legal research committee because our bylaws need changing, and it's a legal issue and people have tried. So this year it's like, okay, let's try to make it happen this year. That hasn't started yet. We need a conflict of interest ad hoc committee because in the bylaws, it makes reference to the conflict of interest policy and we don't have one. So I feel as though like legally, we need to like really get that in order. We came up with an officer's transition handbook because for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been a struggle, a barrier to leadership, because where is the information that the president, the board chair, the treasurer, everybody needs access to. So we're formally doing officially an officer's transition handbook, and we moved it to the first quarter because as I'm learning the role, as I'm learning what's the password, what's the link, how do I access that, we've moved it to there. So that's just a quick update. And so what I'm going to do real quickly is show you the blank copy that Gretchen will share with you. It's more like a sample rather than a blank copy. And oops. So I just included some of our stuff. So I say blank sample, just, you would come up with what's important to you. And this actually became like, yeah. So you'll get a copy of that. So, so thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. Several things jumped out at me. One, I would say is, I think an important thing you mentioned is being open to change when necessary. And I think everyone has kind of mentioned a version of that, but that flexibility in this environment has been super key. Also, it's very clear that you all are not winging it. Even if you're getting down to the basics, you're defining your path and you're moving forward with specific steps in mind of what the goal is you're trying to achieve. And I really appreciate that. And I think you were going to share like a blank version of your with the group. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I can share that again.
Awesome. Yeah,
thank you. You just did it really fast.
Yeah, and if I don't know if it's possible, can you stick it in the chat just as a link in the chat? Is that
I was just going to have Gretchen forward it to follow.
Great, that's perfect. Yeah, so we'll so if you wanted to use this as a template for moving forward, but again, they're defining their goals in very specific ways, and not just sort of what are we doing next week is, I think, helpful. And I think that longer term planning can kind of alleviate some of the pressure of feeling like it's overwhelming and it's all we're all struggling. And
you also mentioned, show you something. I'll quickly show you something. We also use this then as our template for my first quarterly report. So then we let me just move this a bit. So then we document the what happened with the first BBB, the bingo, the first bingo, the happy hour, the workshop. So then we kind of continue to track. And this, you'll see like our support services. These are all the things, we started to think about, because why are we using people's personal or their company's Zoom things that might have limitations? We should just get a Zoom account. We should get a Canva account, blah, blah, blah. So, so this is also a template for, how I do quarterly reports and stuff like that. And this is something that didn't necessarily exist in the past. And I'm like the systems guy. Not everybody is this, what is it? Anal compulsive.
attention to detail. But yeah, having those business systems in place is something that we all need. And you mentioned having something to carry forward that institutional knowledge as new boards come into place. Not everybody has Shirley at their beck and call, right? I mean, not everybody's got Shirley in the room to say, well, this is what it looked like 20 years ago or whatever it was. So if you don't have Shirley, I mean, first choice, Shirley. Second choice, having a board manual, something to carry that institutional knowledge from place to place. What we did is have a Google Drive, and every every team had a Google folder in that Google Drive. That Google Drive just gets passed down from board to board to board. And so everybody knows crazy stuff that happened when I was there, like, oh, we had to hire a lawyer. And what was the institutional knowledge about that? It's in that file, so that people in 10 years are going to know, how come I had to hire a lawyer way back when? So thank you, Jerry, for all of that really like practical information. And we still have about 25 minutes. So what's on your mind? What are things you're struggling with? What are things you want to workshop? What are ideas you want to share? Things that are working well for you? Or, we all, if there's a common theme today, is we're struggling. And yet we're hearing again and again, this is working, this is working, this is working, this is working. So it's important to pull out those pieces. That is, there are these successes happening even amidst a struggle. And we know it's been a struggle for several years now, in many different directions, not just whether or not your board is recruitment, but the world's on fire. So how do you just survive in that? So what do y'all want to talk about?
I have a question about, do your organizations meet, do something monthly? Do you do it quarterly? Or which way have you found out works best for you? It's open to anybody. I don't.
We
Rich or
quarterly,
Lisa?
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
We have quarterly board meetings, which I think are not enough. Like, we're going to have one in between in July. But the thing that I threw out is that I think quarterly, it ends up being an hour and a half, and that's harder for people to take time. And I forgot to acknowledge Arlette to see if she wanted to add anything to what I said too. But anyway, I think quarterly isn't enough for our board meetings. So thank you.
What about your membership meetings?
We only have an annual membership meeting, and that's when the vote happens for the incoming board. And then the board is elected, and then the board elects the officers. What we've done traditionally the last 4 years is we make sure that we have candidates for the officer positions in our recruitment for the board, because we've never had two candidates for one position and that sort of thing too. Okay. Yeah. So in a way, it's like our workshops used to be kind of like a regular kind of a members meeting. Yeah, so thank you.
Jana, how about you? Do you all meet on a annual basis? I mean, a quarterly basis? I mean, I'm talking about members, because if we got to get the members involved before they're going to get on the board, right? Or get the members in the, as we say it, sometimes get the butts in the seat.
Yeah, we do monthly membership meetings. We don't meet in July typically, although this year we are trying a kind of just a fun social, couple of our members collaborate together on a volunteer event that happens in the summer. So have like an optional social opportunity to come volunteer together for July, but otherwise monthly.
Are you still doing virtual, or are you doing in person?
Combination of both. So I know our program committee has the next 6 months planned out, and I think 2 of those are in person and 4 will be virtual. So
okay.
For
Thanks,
Delaware,
Mary.
Ours is pretty much monthly. We have been doing both virtual, and we just started this year some in person. And I don't know if Rich or Lisa, you want to talk more about that?
I was just basically going to say, yeah, we're trying to do like a hybrid schedule, and we try to do check-ins with our members, I would say monthly to bi-monthly. And then the board, we usually meet about once a month, I think, but it's usually like, roughly, because sometimes the schedules change, different things like that. So we try to touch base on a virtual platform about once a month or so.
Thank you. That helps. We meet, well, we have a session monthly. But it's been really hard to get people to even attend on it on the monthly basis. And we've tried so many different things. You all give me some good ideas for Tulsa. And I'm sure when Brenda, the current president, gets to feeling better and she listens to the recording, we'll all be put to work again. There's basically 3 of us on the board. We started it and we've had people come and be part of the board. And then all of a sudden they just disappear. And we, they don't tell us that they don't want to be on the board anymore. They just kind of disappear off of everybody's radar. So that's been a struggle for us. It may be that the 3 of us have too strong of personalities for everybody. I don't know. It might be the case. So
I have a question just for everyone in general, just something that I've reflected on. Tim brought it up a little bit, but nobody else really talked about, the financial considerations. And that made me wonder, are you, do you put any financial effort into your board? So is there and are you putting up, benefits, what for this board leadership pieces, or even are you just spending some money on the board once in a while? Let's say go out to lunch for our meeting, which may be hard for some folks. Do you provide a membership free or conference admission free, any type of recognition or even just a gift card? Just wondering about that piece. And you don't have to answer. You could put it in the chat if you like.
Mary Lynn, your hand's up. Did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I was going to actually talk about something slightly different from that, but
Go ahead.
when Gretchen started talking about the financial part of it, one of the things that we're doing is in Sacramento is that we're looking at outside funding. So we're looking at, we were able to participate for a second year in Big Day of Giving, which is a local nonprofits get together and fundraise. And because we're a nonprofit, we're 501c3, we qualify. And so this year we brought in about $3,000 just from that, people donating $25 here and there, and that kind of stuff. And so that's been very helpful to us as well. And then we have gone after some grants, which we have gotten some as well. So that's another thing too, is as a nonprofit, if you are one, don't forget that you have access to some of that as well. And then to kind of respond to Gretchen's questions about what are you doing for your board members, when we do our retreat, we do have lunch for everybody and that kind of thing that we provide. And we've generally given a little gift of some sort, usually a token of what we have. We usually have some swag that we've created that has the logo on it. And so once a year we would pass that type of thing out. But we haven't done something where we've done a lot of networking types of things where we would go together someplace to gather recently. Because of COVID, we've been fairly quiet about those kinds of things. But I think any way that you can get everybody together and have that opportunity to connect is really, really important.
Yes, speaking about sponsorship ideas and how to generate some additional income, one thing we did in the past, we haven't done recently, but we had for not, broad-based support, but just for one workshop, we had verified volunteers when they used to be verified volunteers, now they're Sterling, but verified volunteers sponsored that one workshop. And so they had, we had Rob Jackson in, we had, 60 participants or something like that. And verified volunteers covered the costs for the hospitality and the room costs for that one workshop. I'm not sure that they would still be doing that, but there might be a way to get one event, a sponsor for one event and do it in a more targeted way as opposed to more general fundraising.
I have a question for everyone. During your monthly or quarterly meetings, what percentage or what number of membership actually attends the meeting?
That's a great question. I would say in Iowa, it's maybe 25 to 30% of the membership participates in any particular meeting.
Yeah, and that's pretty good. That's not unusual. I don't think it really, I mean, it depends on the topic or the timing and, you know, all sorts of things in between. And yeah, there's some great stuff going on in the chat box. So thank you very much for that. I was wondering, Jen, if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit more about that VISTA process. And does that mean that BMCI also has a strong connection with your state office on volunteerism, which I'm thinking you probably do because that's Volunteer Iowa.
Yep. So just as far as the connection with Volunteer Iowa, yes. So Volunteer Iowa, we have an organization membership to VMCI, and we have, I think, 6 of our staff members are members, but probably only 2 of us who regularly participate in meetings, and some will kind of come and go as the topic is relevant. We don't have, and I don't know why I never thought of this, we don't have a VISTA that works with the MCI, but now my wheels are turning. So I work with our VISTA program. For those of you who aren't very familiar with VISTA, VISTA is one of the AmeriCorps programs. Specifically, all of the projects have a poverty alleviation focus. So sometimes that you kind of have to get a little bit creative of how is this specific project going to alleviate poverty, but I think that it's easy to make a case that by supporting organizations who are supporting volunteers, you know, it's not directly supporting that, but it is still supporting those efforts. And this does serve for 1 year in a full-time capacity, so 35 to 40 hours a week. And sometimes if organizations can't support that, they don't have a need for 40 hours a week for a full year. Sometimes organizations will partner together. So maybe this is VISTA supporting two organizations. That sometimes happens too. But really working to build capacity for the organization that the VISTA is serving. So that can be anything from program development, grant writing, research, volunteer management for a lot of nonprofits. You know, anything that's going to help that organization kind of move forward in their work, or members, especially organizations like this, that it's all volunteer members on their boards who have full-time jobs and are kind of just, you know, strapped for time. It can be a dedicated person that this is what they're doing and maybe helping build your membership, do some community outreach, increase, you know, awareness of the organization. So there's all kinds of stuff like that, that's what this does do.
Thanks, Janet. Okay.
Gretchen.
Go ahead.
Gretchen, I'd like to add one little thing that has worked very well in Idaho for connection with each other. We have developed what we call the Coalition on Volunteerism, which is made up of the nonprofit organization, the Serve Idaho or AmeriCorps organization, the Learn and Serve at the university, the Dovia, the Suite ofs is part of it. And there's another one. Anyhow, that's been going for about 10 years. And because it's happened, the groups all work together and really know what each other is doing. It got started because nobody knew what the right hand was doing from the left hand. And now when we talked about disbanding it 3 or 4 years ago, they said, no, we don't want to, because we know we can trust each other and we know it's getting done and we don't have to worry about it. So it has really worked here. And you don't have a state office or anything else, but you have this connection that has really worked.
To add to that, and Shirley's probably aware of this because she knows everything, but I just to tell the group on the one way that actually has worked is that our group, our leadership with Suite ofs, because I understand how the other states have talked about certain groups not wanting to work together, maybe acting like a competition. We have staff and volunteers and board members that are on each of these groups. So for instance, I am on the leadership for our Dovia group, and I'm a commissioner on Serve Idaho, who is our AmeriCorps. Then we have one of our members is also part of the Idaho Nonprofit Center, and then volunteers with the Serve Idaho as well. And this has kind of helped facilitate that. So not that any of us can take on more work or more volunteer stuff, but it was a way to keep that going, is that we have staff and volunteers in there. I don't know if just coming up with this group would have helped. It was that we all made sure that we were sort of intertwined and sort of forced the hand of everybody.
I have a question. So to use a baseball analogy, baseball will go out and farm minor leagues to eventually, with the hope of getting those minor league players into starting roles. So I've thought about doing that with our board, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't know, I don't attend that many meetings. How is board service different from being a general member? But most often the answer that we hear when we talk to people, and we've done the one-on-one calls and the surveys of what is a barrier to board, membership with you, it's almost always the additional time, which I find ironic, because on the other end, we have such great camaraderie from the time that we spend together that a lot of people put that that's what they most enjoy about board service. So has anyone put any feelers out, or has anyone else started to try to, take note of those people that come to meetings and really participate to, hey, we'd like you to start off small. Maybe I think it was Jerry who said that maybe attending a board meeting or being a member at large is maybe a lower time cost barrier. So yeah, anyone have anything to contribute there?
Or a committee member. A few people had mentioned, joining as a committee, or it could be even, could you help us with this one project? We've done that and weaseled our way into that one project. Oh, see, you see how it is now. We want to be on this committee and continue with the next project. And then next thing you know, they're the president of the board for 3 years. That happened to me. I started out working on one project, joined the committee, joined the board as a member at large, joined the board as a chair, then was president. So you can kind of reel them in a little at a time. That's what happened to me. Other ideas?
Is it okay for me to speak, Jen?
Go, Jerry, go.
Yeah. So when we had the principles and practices of volunteer program management course twice a year in person, that was a great place to see potential board members. Then some of them we drew into the ad hoc committee for the updates and stuff like that. But we definitely pulled in people like from there, because it's like, that was great. And like I said, even though I'm very happy with the virtual world, because I'm wearing flip-flops, but I do have real pants on. The commute in New York City, in the different boroughs and stuff is a challenge. But sitting next to that person, starting that conversation, that's where, that stuff happens. Even our happy hours that were in person, or the brown bag breakfast, it was like informal, you chat, you get to know somebody. We have a way of tracking who attends and participates in things, but there's nothing that replaces that familiar face that you're seeing, next to them in person and that sort of thing too. So I just to address the question raised by Brittany, I think I'm actually going through this challenge right now, because I didn't think the last 2 years had impacted us. And the one thing that depressed me, and then I'll stop, is Arlette and I are both involved in Greater New York Association of Directors and Volunteer Healthcare Services, which we call Greater New York. And they've really struggled. Some of you are in healthcare. They got deployed to different departments, so the whole volunteer programs weren't working. So 2 years out, they've had to finally vote for a new board and blah, blah, blah. Now, this was just to approve the new bylaws and blah, blah, blah. Hospitals, money. They're not going to give up that membership a budget line, right? They had 22 people on the Zoom on Friday. And on Friday, our upcoming workshop, we had 6 people registered for it. Then we kicked up some dirt and dust and we're up to 14 now. But you know, I hate to admit that despite NIAVA's great plans, people aren't taking advantage of the member benefits. Arlette, do you want to add anything?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's coming from the healthcare perspective. It's really been hard here in New York City. As Jerry mentioned, a lot of our members have been furloughed or are currently doing something else or something else in addition to handling volunteers. I just want to mention also when Tim spoke about his membership, his association. Tim, just a few days as immediate past president of New York State Association, which is again mainly healthcare. And we have members who what they want is just the events, you know, to have all these webinars, meeting, and then you have another set who are saying, okay, we don't have a board. We used to be a board, and if we're gonna, you know, sustain this association, let's start off small. So I am like in the middle saying, okay, yes, let's get the board, but in the meantime, you know, let's see who as speakers we can gather so that when that board installation takes place, then the board can, you know, focus now and in addition to getting our membership up and running, to get some speakers to engage members. And so hopefully would lead to, again, as Gretchen mentioned, that finance, because right now for the state, we don't have, we suspended our dues. And so as a member, as Jerry mentioned, Greater New York, for the last 2 years, it was a pay what you can. Our membership is 75 for Greater New York and the state was 40. So for Greater New York, we just, you know, we pay what we can. Some would pay the full 75 because their association would still allow them to do so. So it's been rough here with the healthcare, but we're trying to make it work.
Awesome. Thank you, Arlette. And thank you everybody so much for this conversation. I find it really interesting how even with all the challenges we're facing, how successful people are being, and it's all because of the dedication for the people in this room and maybe the people watching on a recording later. So thank you so much for sharing, honestly, your challenges. It helps all of us know that we're not alone, that it's not just us. We have not dropped the ball. That's not why we're struggling. This is something we're seeing across local associations everywhere. So congratulations on fighting the good fight, even in challenging situations. So Jennifer, do you want to give a quick shout out about the Impact Awards?
Yes. For those of you who do not know, Alive for the last, we're going in our 4th year, has given out awards for outstanding service as a volunteer administrator. And we're at 2 different levels. One that has up to 7 years of volunteer management service. And the other one is from 8 years and above. And Tim was one of our winners last year. So he can probably speak about it better than anything else. But here it is. In August the 1st, nominations will be able to be submitted for our Impact Award. Now, you can nominate yourself, and each one of you should nominate yourself because you're all doing outstanding work for your organizations and for your local association. If you choose not to do that, but you have somebody that you want to nominate that's maybe on one of your committees that you know has done an outstanding job for them, this year is the easy way to do it. We'll have a form where all you have to do as a nominator is give us their basic information, and then we will contact them and we will ask them then to fill out the questionnaire so that we can get a good rounded view. This is a judge thing, but it's so exciting. The winners are now announced at the hybrid conference. There is a monetary award given as well as a plaque. in each one of the categories, and there's 3 in each one, so first, second, and third. I just think you all should think about it, go out on a live and look at the newsletters and things that has more information on it. I'd like to see each one of you nominate yourself or nominate a person from maybe your association that you think has done an outstanding job this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
A couple other things coming up. We've got the hybrid conference, as Jennifer mentioned, that's coming up in October about that evaluation. We will have our local association summit. So basically a slightly larger version of this little chat today. That'll be happening in November. We also will have another community of practice just like this coming up in September. We're going to be talking about social media, not just social media as you know it, but some new innovative approaches to use of social media and how we might apply that to our board development. And then we are working on updating our local association list. So you'll look for that, check that out on our website. The updates should be ready for us at the beginning of July. And remember that if you are a member of Alive as a local association, that means all of your members of your local association can attend the webinars, the Alive webinars for free. So free programming on a monthly basis available to your members if you're a member of Alive as an association. So it's a great way to bump up your program offerings with no effort whatsoever on your part, maybe sending out a link to registration. So please keep that in mind as you're planning your programming going forward and offer that to your folks. And with that, we'll say goodbye and thank you so much and take care and be well. It was wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.